Turn on kids scene. Turn on movie scene. Hey, it's Joe Farrow with Geek Toolkit. Today I want to talk about Home Assistant. Home Assistant is a home automation software that's open source, freely available, and Home Assistant itself is mainly a Python app. You install it on a device and then it provides a web page, which is what you're looking at today. One of my frustrations with Home Assistant when I was starting out is I found it very hard to find a video that just kind of showed me what it was to use Home Assistant. What did it look like? What did the UI look like? And what did it provide? I could see tons of stuff about all of the amazing things it supported, but I didn't understand how to add them or what that looked like. And so that's what I want to do in this video today, is kind of walk you through the very basics of Home Assistant from a visual standpoint. Now, there are some amazing community members that have done YouTube videos for Home Assistant that do everything from advanced setups to even this tutorial video from a different perspective, and I'll link to those at the end. I don't want to replace their videos, I just want to do it from a different viewpoint. So this is what my Home Assistant UI looks like. It's running on a Raspberry Pi and it exposes a web interface, and it exposes, in my case, a Samba share or a file share. And I'll show that in a second as well, but those are the two main ways I interact with it. I've customized my web interface to show things that I care about, given them names, and organized them in a certain way. So you can see very simply, I've got some things here which are just very quick things I can look at and see what the luminance is in my hallway or what lights are on or off. These little dots I can drag to dim the lights, so I just dim the lights in the room I'm in, the makerspace. And I can set that back up to 100%. So these are 4 dimmers. I have a thing called AdGuard on my Raspberry Pi, and what that does is it blocks ads. It's very similar to a Pi-hole. Those are both add-ons for Home Assistant, so that's one of the things it can do. I'll show you how those get added on and such, but for this UI here, it's just showing me the performance of them. I can also see the luminance of my upstairs and see that, a little bit of a history. These charts here are telling me the health of the Raspberry Pi it's running on, which is important to me. And I can also see the temperature and see how its temperature and humidity are doing for upstairs. So these are Z-Wave light switches that these are talking to. These are Z-Wave sensors, but all that is abstracted out because Home Assistant works with a variety of protocols. It works with Z-Wave and Insteon and so on. To talk to Z-Wave and some of the protocols, though, you do have to have USB key, let's call them USB dongles, plugged into your Raspberry Pi. So I have a USB dongle for Z-Wave, and I've got another one on order right now for Zigbee. And when I plug that one in, Home Assistant will be able to recognize that, and I'll be able to configure Zigbee devices. So the next thing I want to talk about is I'm going to show the integrations. This is the Home Assistant website. And these are the things that it can integrate with. Now it's 1,492 are shown here, but please understand, like, one of them that are shown here is just simply the Amazon, let's say Echo, so I don't trigger a bunch of people's home automations, including mine. So the Echo devices, all of those are filed under one thing here. One of my favorite categories, you can see categories down on the left-hand side here. If we click on cameras, these are brands that it works with, and there's just quite a few here. So Foscam makes quite a few IP cameras, so this one entry is maybe 10 or a dozen cameras that it works with. If I click on DIY, this is one of my favorite categories, and one of the things that really lit me up about Home Assistant was there was a lot of stuff that was very maker friendly. For instance, you can plug in Raspberry Pi shields and have them take part in your home automation system. I just thought that was really cool. The same with Arduinos. You can plug in things into Arduinos and have those sensors act as part of your home automation system. And that integration was there. I thought that was really neat. Now, the next question I always had though is, what does that look like? For instance, if I want to, here's the Arduino integration, and I wanted to understand, okay, well, what does that look like in Home Assistant? How do I add something? And this is where it gets a little bit weird. There's what's called YAML, yet another markup language, YAML. And it's, when you click on an integration, you'll see a little bit of snippet of code like this. In Home Assistant, there's a configuration.yaml file. And you basically go to a share, and you go to that configuration.yaml, and you load it up, and it looks like this. And you would take that snippet of code and paste it into here. And then you change anything that you need to change. For instance, in this case, I had to configure my Z-Wave device. For my my LEDs that are on here, I had to configure the IP address. So you do a little bit of configuration in here. You paste this YAML file, and then you restart the Raspberry Pi. On startup, or in whatever your Home Assistant device is, it might be, again, a NUC. On startup, it will read this file, and then it will recognize the devices and expose them to you, so you can put them into what are called automations. So this is, there's some other configurations in here while we're in the YAML. You can put your latitude and longitude, and what this does is it helps calculate things like, when is the sunrise? If you want to do something like turn my outdoor lights on when the sun sets, it will use internet data to find out when the sun sets, and you can use that as a trigger for an automation to turn the lights on or off. That's really powerful. There's also some other things you can do with that. Let's see, there was one other thing in here I wanted to show. Yes, discovery. By simply having discovery : that turns on the feature of auto discovery, and that has been so cool. Because outside of my Z-Wave devices, I really didn't understand how many automated devices I could control with this. All of my Rokus lit up when I added this discovery token inside the YAML. And that allows, let's see if I can bring those up. If I go over to detail, this is kind of everything. This is a mess here. But you can see I've got two Rokus. I've got a TCL TV, which is a TV with a Roku built in. And if I click this, I can turn that TV on. And then I can click here and I can actually change the source. And when I say change the source, it means any app that Roku has. So if I want an automation, and actually I showed this at the intro, where I want to launch it into Netflix, I can simply have this execute and Netflix will be on my TV. Matter of fact, as I was going through this demo, when I look up, I've got Netflix on my TV now. So let's turn that TV off. And my TV just turned off, which is nice. But these were auto-discovered. That drop-down list was auto-populated, and that was just part of the discovery portion of this, which is, again, really powerful. So now I want to move over to the add-ons. On the left-hand side here, this is the web view. This is the overview, takes you back to the first view. So I'm going to click down to has.io. I had mentioned about installing the has.io version of this because it allows for add-ons, and this is what that looks like. AdGuard Home is my ad blocking system. I also have a thing called InfluxDB that I'll talk about, but these are very simple. It's almost like installing apps on a phone. You go to the add-on store, and you've got different stores, just like something you do on like Android, where you add a sideload a different add-on store. So you've got the official ones and community ones. And you can see there's quite a few things here. There's some Google integrations in here. Let's see, there's voice integrations where it'll talk to you. If I want an SSH server, if I want to turn that on, I don't have to actually go to the Raspberry Pi and configure it. I can simply install this add-on and configure it. Down here are a bunch of other ones the community has made. And these are separate things that I can just very simply add on. Oh, there's Pi-hole actually, and install, and they run like apps, and they allow me to do more with this Raspberry Pi. It's very, very cool. I love having a web interface that helps manage things. Made it very user-friendly. And this is really why I picked this system, is I wanted something that was fairly user-friendly, with a front end and something that I could do this kind of stuff with, but also I want it to be very maker friendly. If I wanted to build a Arduino or Raspberry Pi sensor or camera or whatever, I wanted to be able to plug that in. And Home Assistant lets me do that. Now, let's talk about automations. Automations are things that get triggered, and the trigger causes, it's basically cause and effect. Trigger fires and then something happens. So for instance, if I'm talking to my smart speaker and I tell it that I want to play a game, then I might want my Xbox to turn on, I might want the lights to dim, I might want the TV to turn on, and I might want my Dynaframes to go to video game ads. And that would be an automation. That's one thing. Or maybe when I come home, I want to have it play some music, turn the porch lights on so that it welcomes me and stuff like that. So automations are how that's created. And you can edit the YAML files directly. There's a bit of a UI to do it as well. But my favorite thing, and again, one of the things that really sold me on Home Assistant was being able to use what's called Node-RED. Now, Node-RED is a common, I would say, a thing I've seen running in Linux before for doing logic, block logic. It looks like this. But Node-RED with home automation, Home Assistant integration means I can drag things over here. I can drag a block over, and I can double click on this event, and there you see Home Assistant, and I can say what type of event it is, and I can start filling this out. Then I can drag another block over of what I want it to do, and then I can connect these two blocks with a line. Now these two are connected. I would click deploy, it will go out to my device, and then that would become activated. Here's a couple I already had set up. So I'll show you when my makerspace lights turn on, which is what I showed in the video. This right here is my LED strip. My LED strip, I bought a $12 Wi-Fi add-on. It was one of the integrations that Home Assistant supported. And now Home Assistant can control that light strip. So the makerspace lights turning on was a Z-Wave switch, can now turn on my LED lights as well. The other thing it does is these monitors are actually my Dynaframes. They're on a automated power switch, and that flips over and turns on. And so that's what you saw when I walk in the room. I hit my light switch, everything turns on. Now this is the opposite. Makerspace lights, when they get turned off, the monitors turn off, the LED strip turns off, and I also turn off the TV. Now notice I don't turn the TV on when I walk into the room. That doesn't make sense to me. But when I walk away and I turn off the lights, I want it to turn off no matter what. So it's slightly different here. And then these all go to a debug thing just so that I can help debug this. I can see a little bit of what's going on over here. So when things are happening, I can look at this and see. So it's very easy to drag and drop things, get outputs, see real time what's going on. The green dot here denotes I'm in this state, that these have fired. You see the red one here, the state is not active right now. And it's also very organized. So these are tabs. This is my lighting setup. And then this one is my mode setup. In this mode here, I can check whenever I talk to my Echo device, and based on which scene I set, I can change the lighting. This is the LED lighting changing. I can change my left Dynaframe and my right Dynaframe. These actions aren't necessarily things that Home Assistant itself would do, but Node-RED allows me to send HTTP requests. I might be able to do it in Home Assistant anyway, but it's really handy to just have it as part of one automation here. So this fires off a Wi-Fi request to my LED lights, 2 HTTP requests, and then when I say set kid scene, my Dynaframes go to Disney views, my lights turn to purple, and the room's ready for my daughter. When I say to turn on a movie scene, a bit more happens, and this is how this works. Let's see here, if the movie scene activates, then the lights dim. The lights turn off. The left frame and right frame go to movie images. The TV gets turned on and it gets set to Netflix. And if I wanted to change that, you can see right here, source Netflix. I would just change that to another word of a different source. And then it gets sent out to the debug. Now, if I say anything else other than the movie scene, the lights will go back up to full. So if I want to do kids scene, the lights will turn back on. But if I go movie scene, the lights and the LEDs turn off. And that's really handy. I found the LEDs very distracting when I was trying to watch movies. So this is my visual UI basically for doing any automation logic. And having the tabs makes it very clean to go between things and have my, a very logical explanation of, okay, I want this one to handle my lighting. If I add security later on, I'll have a tab for that. If I add like outdoor sprinklers, I can have a tab for that. And you can actually have the automations jump between tabs if you need to and stuff like that. I love the drag and drop. I love being able to connect and disconnect things. I love being able to have like, 5 or 6 things here and just wire them up. It's very, very easy and very fun way to do automation logic and also to redo it if you need to. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is customizing the UI. So this is my DynaFrame page. We start out with this basic page here. You can see I've got tabs. Detailed is everything. This is the default one. And then DynaFrame, I actually put 2 pictures here, one for comics and one for science fiction. So when I click on these, it actually changes the DynaFrame to a comic or a science fiction playlist. This one right here is actually power. If I click this, it turns power off to the DynaFrames entirely. So I have a customized UI here, and I'm still working on this. I'll obviously need to make more entries for all the different playlists I have and stuff. But I built this UI out custom, and you can tell these pictures are obviously not from Home Assistant, so I was able to bring those in. This UI framework is what's called Lovelace. And Lovelace, being the UI framework for Home Assistant, has been beautiful. It used to be a separate thing you used to have to set up and all, and now it's just much, much better. You can actually edit and configure things right here. So I said configure UI, and there's DynaFrame. I can say edit, and then I get my more detailed view here of what I want to do. And I can save it and actually update this page. And then let's see, how do I actually get out of this? Because I don't want to edit that. There we go. Let me show you what a better version of UI can look like. So here's one on the right here. This is a Lovelace UI that the Home Assistant Twitter account sent out. And they've actually used pictures of their floor plan. And they actually light up when lights are on and off in the room. That's what it can end up looking like. So you can put a lot of time into this. There's some absolutely beautiful Lovelace UIs out there. And also another cool thing is there are YAML files that are checked in so that you can actually take somebody else's configuration and see how they set things up. And I thought that was really cool. Here's another Lovelace UI that's really, really beautiful. It's got media control in the upper right. You've got a couple of charts here. The color scheme's been customized. There's a lot of work that went into this, but it shows you what's possible. Here's your weather forecast right in this UI. This UI is just a web page. So this web page can be brought up on a phone, a tablet. Some people have gone and bought Raspberry Pis with touchscreens, 7-inch touchscreens. Some people have bought cheap Android tablets. Since it's a web interface, they can mount the tablet on a wall, and they have a very inexpensive, beautiful touchscreen with a customizable UI. It's a great, great solution end to end. The next thing I want to talk about is, this is more UI stuff, but this is actually what's called Grafana. 2 of the plugins that work together that can be added on Hass.io, one is called InfluxDB, which is a database plugin, and the other one's called Grafana, which is a UI rendering of database data. And what's cool about this like 1-2 punch is home automation can generate a ton of data. There are so many sensors that you can plug in, and there's so many things that get registered as sensors. For instance, this, you can see here the home download speed is actually being registered, and internet upload speed. So they're able to track their internet up and download speed. My ad blocker actually has like 5 or 6 different metrics that get tracked with that ad blocker. The This one here is the iPhone battery. So one thing that Home Assistant does really well is you can add your phones, and that does two things. It can track it as presence, and then if it integrates with the phone, it'll actually track things like battery life, which is kind of cool, and where the battery is. The presence is more interesting to me because that allows you to do a new type of trigger of when I've come home and it's physically me versus my wife. Then I can have the home react differently, maybe play a different playlist of music than if she's here, or even yet again, a different playlist if we're both here. And it can do that via, there's tracking things that you can get, or you can just use your phone and say if this phone's on the network, for instance. It does get a little bit weird if your phone is in airplane mode or the phone dies, then the Home Assistant will think that you're no longer there. That's why some people use tracking devices. Grafana being able to render this data allows you to do some really geeky dashboards, and I really enjoy just kind of looking at what people have done. Here's one that I thought was really cool. You've got things like humidity, you've got temperature events, and just all sorts of different charting that you can do and different UI styles. Grafana makes a lot of UI things look really, really beautiful. This one here is from Benny, looks like 2017. It's posted up on medium.com. Here's another one that I thought was really cool. This is an energy monitoring page, and they actually broke out their dishwasher, dryer, washer, and so you see different types of dials. Now, of course, they aren't showing any usage on a lot of these, but they're actually doing calculations for how much it's costing for each device, and that's just some really powerful data to be able to look at, really geek out about. So that's my run through of Home Assistant, and hopefully that gives you a better visual idea of how Home Assistant works. There's two people I follow on YouTube pretty commonly. One is DrZzs, and I'll link that in the description below. And he does some great things with, like, he ties everything in from like holiday lights on into his Home Assistant and does some great videos. There's another one that's Bruh Automation, and Bruh Automation is very, very well versed in Home Assistant and also just explaining the ecosystem out there and the state of home automation. So I'll link to both of them below. I think they're great follows if you're really into this stuff. And honestly, that's who I'm learning from. You can see I'm still building up. But this should give you at least a beginner look at Home Assistant and where my home automation system is, and also how I do things like control my TV and my Dynaframes together. Thanks for watching. This is Joe with Geek Toolkit, and if you have any questions, please post them in the comments below, and I'll get to work on the next video. Thanks again.